Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Join us as we travel and explore the vast unknown. It's a hero's journey with dragons to slay, damsels to save, and innumerable treasures to hoard. Torches high.
Look at it from a different perspective.
Hey guys, what is happening and what is up? Hold out that glass, because we about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Well, hey guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey. Be sure to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. Be sure to check this banner down below with all of our social medias at their various platforms. That would be much, much appreciated. Well guys, I got a guest coming up. It's a first time guest. Hopefully it's the first of many, but I have worked with this gentleman before many times through my brother Nick on the Occult Rejects. But I'd like to welcome to the show for the first time, and like I said, hopefully the first of many, the Headless Giant. Headless, thank you for joining me, brother.
How you doing? You can find me at Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube at the Headless Giant. Look those up and you will enjoy the content. Tomorrow, I got the Headless's Magical Mailbag, where we read people's occult/esoteric/magical experiences while giving them information on ancient symbols, modern symbols that are used in magic, and give our thoughts and feelings on it. So I do that one with Nick. And then I've got Alchemy Mondays with Eros Up and the Trialogues with Ethan Indigo on Sundays. Also Ricardo. And Tuesdays, got 777 also with Nick. So we're going through the Kabbalah of Aleister Crowley. If you guys are interested in what Crowley thought about things, cosmological, all you got to do is read 777. It's not going to hurt you. But you'll find out about a lot of different ciphers. A lot of different ciphers that are still being used today that people just sort of gloss over. But that's the good stuff. That's the stuff you can really start using to decode other things. But yeah.
Well, Headless, just for those that don't know, and actually I don't know, so I'm curious myself, give us a little background, man. Like, how did you get into this space? What's your kind of your speciality? What was your gateway drug into this space?
Well, I started getting really interested in the Greek gods about 2 to 3 years ago. And it was, it seemed like a constant process of relearning what the ancients already knew. And then sort of what I'm coming across and seeing how there's a lot of parallels between ancient cosmology and the cosmology we see today. We're just not as aware of it as we used to be. I think that's sort of gone out the window. So what I like to try and do is bring a little bit of the ancient understanding to modern phenomena so that people can really sort of know where to put things. And magic is one of the things that I cover a lot. And I think we don't really have a good definition for magic, right? And so what I try to do is I try to bring what I think is the most accurate one based off of the given criteria. And I think magic can best be explained as an illusion used to influence reality. So it applies to all other forms of magic. As you know, Crowley had his own form of magic, which talked about the will. Now, the will is kind of implied by magic, and if you think about it, the will's not necessary for illusions to be real or to influence reality. There can be coincidence and happenstance, right? So a lot of times these illusions that were used to influence reality back then are being sort of played out again and again without our knowing of it consciously, maybe subconsciously. And what I'm going over today, which is the Oklahoma land rush, seems to me like a subconscious fertility ritual, which was far more common back in the old days. And I think as I go through it, a lot of people are going to get that indication.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I know when I invited you to come on, and I was like, well, what are we going to talk about? And you brought this up. I was like, okay, this was definitely unexpected. So I'm surprised to sit down and learn this. I've not heard this before, so this is new to me. So the floor is yours, sir.
Well, let's go over this real quick. So this is the Land Run Monument is the largest bronze sculpture in the world, right? Because each and every one of these carts, wagons, riders, and horses is connected under the ground by a strip of bronze, making it all one single continuous sculpture. So the Land Run sculpture is automatically setting records, right? But here's the thing. The ancients believed that fertility was more like an energy than it was like a sperm count or, even, the springtime when the leaves are coming out. It's a demonstration of that fertility energy. And you could see over and over again, they'd have all of these fertility festivals and all of these different, goddess worship was big with fertility. And you also had phallic worship that was big in fertility as well. So when we're looking at the Oklahoma land rush, I start to notice some similar patterns here. So first off, they have everybody lined up, right? At around this spot too. So there was no Oklahoma City at all at the time of the Oklahoma land rush in the 1880s. The late 1880s is the first time they had started building there. And so what they say over and over again in Oklahoma is this idea of boomers and sooners. Right? So boomers are the people who would, yell out to people about the land rush, getting everybody there. Sooners are the ones who would jump the gun and go out there and try to get their claim before anybody else had moved. Right? So within that dichotomy, you could start to see, there's something magical going on here. So I would say that the primary fundamental duality in the universe is tension and release. Right? So if you're going to classify everything down to sort of like the most basic constituents, you've got, potential energy and kinetic energy. Kinetic would be the release. Potential is that tension. When you're doing magic, you have to build up some concentrating tension within yourself, direct it at your target, and then release it. Right? So within the magical ritual is that fundamental duality of the universe, which would be tension and release. Now, tension isn't immediately obvious to the people looking at the thing, unless you've got, thousands of people lined up at a starting line, getting ready to go at the drop of a cannonball, right? So you've got this massive tension and release play going on here, as well as, the sort of sacrifice. Like, people are coming in from all over, going through hell just to get here so that they can find their free land. If anything, you could say that the Black Friday sales is a similar ritual to this Oklahoma land rush. But it's not uncommon either, because actually in the days of Hecate over in the Anatolian Peninsula, they would have nighttime rides using torches. They called them torch races between the trees in Anatolia in reverence to the goddess Hecate, goddess of magic. Also, part of that magic is fertility. So in a lot of ways, the incorporation of horses to ancient fertility rites would not be unfounded at all. In fact, you could find that pretty easily. Also, you've got the concept of the Hieros Gamos, which is where this is what the Greeks called the holy sacred. And as they're staking out the different portions of the land that they got, they're committing a fourfold Hieros Gamos, where you're taking the sky and pounding it into the earth. And so Oklahoma City is a city they call being built in a day, because nothing before 1889 existed there. And there's some really, really interesting buildings in Oklahoma that look like they were older than 1889, but all of the downtown area is supposedly built all within that time frame. And I think it's got a lot more magical history than a lot of people give it credit for. There were four, this was sort of a symbolic gesture as well. There are 4 parks that ring Oklahoma City, right? And on those 4 parks, they're dedicated to Freemasonic ideals. It's almost like they were staking out the Oklahoma City claim by these 4 parks. And so you've got one in the southwest, one in the southeast, one in the northwest, one in the northeast. And these parks are sort of central to the identity of the city, but they've sort of gone by the wayside ever since. What you find is that with these fertility rituals is you have a massive boom bust cycle, right? Everybody's going out there because they think they're going to get something for free. Everybody's going out there to try and build something for themselves, some plot of land that they can, have a claim to. Well, it turns out in Oklahoma, it was a barren no man's land when nobody lived there, right? So what ended up happening is all of the settlers built these dams in the river and actually started to change the climate of Oklahoma. So they terraformed this place after this massive fertility ritual. You starting to see what I'm saying? There's a continuity, even though there maybe not be a conscious aim to, engage in a fertility rite.
Yeah, usually it's like you're saying, it's like even like on a subconscious level, reforming the land and making it fertile through their means. Right.
And like all the best rituals, most people don't know that they're even engaged in it.
Right.
And so you look at what they're kind of pushing us through in the mass rituals we've got today, and you could say that they've lost the frontier angle, right? So all of the fertility rites are based around this idea of frontiersmanship or pushing the limits, right? Not staying within yourself, but actually going out beyond what you would view being possible, right? Riding all the way out to Oklahoma and then catching a bunch of free land seems pretty outrageous, but on the surface level, like that's what you would have to do to make a deal with the god, right? And so the deal paid off pretty well for the Oklahomans because they also got all this fertile land in return for it. Now, we got to get into the big, the cotton boom, right? Because it wasn't just all of this fertility. You also had these massive, events like the Dust Bowl, for instance.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, Headless, but I wanted to ask this before you move on, since was just on that subject. I'm not familiar with this event in history. This is actually the first time, unashamed, I'll tell you, the first time I've heard about this. So there was, when we were expanding west, they were just basically trying to get people to go out here. So it's just basically free land. Just come out here. We want you to settle it that way and cultivate it and not, take it from the indigenous people, basically invade the land and push them out. And it's kind of like an Oregon Trail type thing, I guess, how I'm hearing it. But I would assume
it's a little bit more complex than that. No, here's the problem.
People dying on the way, killing each other, fighting over land, and that's another fertility thing, pouring blood onto the land.
Right. And I think in a lot of ways, the Native Americans and the settlers really benefited from each other being out there because the Native Americans didn't really have the type of cattle or grazing that could produce, a strong nation. They needed to have, customers and everything else. They had already been pushed out there with the Trail of Tears. They were already well aware of the fact that this was a badland. There was nothing to grow, nothing to eat. This is why we had the Dust Bowls. But once everybody else moved in, the white people are coming and
taking our shitty land now.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's like this Oklahoma is one of the most harmonious places between whites and natives because they've sort of all grown up around each other. They have been separate, like there's definitely segregation, but at the same time, there's kind of a mutual respect and they get along with each other. Like the elders of both tribes are sort of on the same page when it comes to growth and everything else. So it's more like having neighbors that don't necessarily come to your meals, but certainly do have stuff you can interact with them on. So
Coexist.
right.
Are you a hunter, a hiker, or just an outdoor enthusiast? Well, if you are, you know that good quality gear is hard to come by. And finding all-American made is like finding Bigfoot in the woods. Hence the name of Squatch Survival Gear. Head on over to squatchsurvivalgear.com. Use the code PLP10 for 10% off store-wide.
There's a lot more of that happening in Oklahoma with the tribes out there than in a lot of places, because I think the state kind of stays out of it. You know, when the state gets in the way and starts dictating rules to one group or another, that's where you don't actually have the mutually beneficial relationship. Is because now, well, this has to be compromised just for the sake of compromise. In this case, I think a lot of tribes actually stayed private. So they didn't want to have, nation status. Within the United States, there's 513 independent nations. A lot of people don't realize that. And they want to have more, right? So everybody thinks of the United States as this one uniform body, but if you look at the real map, you can see that there are pockets of not the United States all across America, and those pockets keep getting bigger. They're using the wealth from these, casinos to buy the land up from under Whitey. So I think it's actually working out pretty well at this point. So they don't want to kill the goose that's laying the golden egg. They just kind of want to be remembered along the way, which is good, I think. It's a more healthier instinct than what we see with a lot of the, racial segregationists. They still have a segregated society, but less so about, hatred or jealousy or any of the rest of the emotions that can go along with that.
It's more of a chosen segregation. They choose to be separate.
Right. And so, in a lot of ways, I see it working out as strongly beneficial, because again, there was nothing there when it came to when the Cherokee first arrived on the Trail of Tears, being kicked out of Georgia. So they went from the lush garden oasis of Georgia to a barren landscape with nothing there and no cities and everything else. So it's a huge adjustment. So once they, came back in and they're like, well, let's get some settlers here so we could actually grow some stuff. That's when everything started to change for the better in Oklahoma. You could actually track this on most of their national parks websites. They're constantly bragging about how they terraformed Oklahoma, and now there are all these species of fish, all these species of birds and reptiles that didn't exist there before. Once the settlers showed up, those weren't there, but they all kind of moved in. They even have beavers today, which is something that is not really heard or known about. But, our ancestors were terraforming the land over and over and over again wherever they went. And in a lot of ways, that terraformed land is what we see today. There's really no wild places,
Yeah.
Hate to break it to you. But there's no place you can go without the fingerprints of mankind on it and him changing the area to suit his needs,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And and that's something that's just so ancient too. And I've not thought about it through this lens that you're giving me. And now that you are, I'm like re-examining a lot of different things in my head now. It's like the Egyptians, they built all these little back channels off of the Nile, and they were terraforming the land. It was already kind of, lush, but it had desert, arid areas, but they just made it lush, out in Massachusetts and up north, they found all these other little channels coming back that the indigenous people had built. So, this is something that even the ancient peoples were doing.
Big time. And all of these megalithic sites have been shown to have some sort of electromagnetic effects on seeds. So what you're looking at with these massive boulders is that they're somehow, this is the proven part that the scientists like to go back to, is they can have these seeds offered to whatever deities there, and then the electromagnetics change the potential of those seeds in a beneficial way, and then you come back and you plant them in your fields. And this has been sort of talked about over and over again, all throughout history for thousands of years. It's like that's the fundamental building block. That's the first layer of what comes later. And we don't see it as the first layer. We're like, wow, they must have had, well, actually, they had to terraform that land to even get to the place where they could use domesticated plants in the first place.
Right. Yep. And it usually, when they go back, they'll like Göbekli Tepe, some of these other sites, the common consensus is no, they had to establish a hierarchy. They had to establish a town, and cultivate and domesticate some wheat or something like that, and then they could worry about religion and that sort of thing, spirituality. But we're finding more often than not with these ancient sites, it's the exact opposite. What brings them together is religion or spirituality, and then through them coming together, work together and form these communities.
Right. And in a lot of ways, I see hunting is a big factor as well. What they don't like to talk about too much is how our ancient ancestors loved to build massive traps that went on for miles and miles and miles. So they would reroute the land itself so that all of the herds of passing goats or whatever could be funneled into a single kill zone, and they could just start tossing rocks down and eat for a year. So it's not uncommon to be thinking about these type of things when it comes to prey animals as well. And in both cases, you've still got these same fertility spirits associated with those ideas. You've got, Apollo's sister, Artemis, being associated with the early spring and with hunting and all this other stuff. It's like you've got this fertility crossover between both the hunting angle and the planting angle. And in terms of Oklahoma, there was not a lot of hunting going on at all before humans got there. And, between the time of the Great Western expansion with the railroads, because they killed off massive amounts of these buffalo with the implementation of the railroads. It didn't have to be that way. I think in a lot of cases, they just killed off all of these buffalo just to keep the indigenous people from having any sort of food for the winter. So it was like, we'll kill them first and then let them rot in the sun.
Yeah, that's one thing I thought was just really sad and stood out to me, like from that movie, when I was a kid, the Dances with Wolves. That's one of the things they showed, that as the train went by, these guys would just, like fish in a barrel. They'd just be riding right beside of them, just shooting them all and dropping them, shooting 40, 50 buffalo at a time, and then just skinning the hides and just leaving the meat there to rot,
Right.
Sad.
And, that's how a lot of terraforming went. It wasn't all sunshine and roses, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit interesting to see the cases where it worked and also note how nobody's talking about it, right? What they did is they basically turned the desert or this Badlands into a magnificent place. And we've lost all sight of that. That should be a frontier, right? Again, back to this fertility ritual. There should be frontiers that we're experiencing and we're trying to occupy. We're trying to, have an influence on, especially, let's say, North Africa. That entire Sahara Desert wasn't always desert. And trying to figure out how to terraform that into usable space again would turn it into the most profitable food venture in all of the world. I mean, going back to Egypt. Egypt was a fertility cult. This is why you had the obelisks everywhere. Obelisks directly relate back to that fertility energy. And so they were the breadbasket for all of the Mediterranean. All of their wheat got shipped to every part of the Mediterranean. You would be eating Egyptian wheat in Rome and even up into Germany. So, I mean, it was a powerful
There's many
industry.
biblical stories talks about that when there was famines in the land, that Egypt was basically supplying the entire known world during those times.
Right. And I think they had to terraform Egypt. I mean, that's pretty clear. They had to take advantage of these floods. They had to do everything in the proper proportion to the sky. And having the awareness of these things probably kept things in balance in their territories. Whereas if you're not thinking about the fertility of the land, if you're not thinking about these things, you end up getting the Dust Bowl, which is something that a lot of people have neglected to blame on the not FDA. What is the other one? USDA. Because the USDA was formed shortly after Lincoln. I believe he's the one who proposed it, but they were encouraging everybody to grow cash crops, which means in Oklahoma, they were looking for cotton. And farmers had been doing crop rotations for thousands and thousands of years before this. They knew how to do the crop rotations. But once the federal government stepped in and started providing the subsidies and insurance for cash crops that they could use to sell around the world, that's when we got the Dust Bowl. That's when everything, all of the ecology that they had worked for had gone to shit.
Yeah.
And
they just totally raped the land. You know, it's like, what do they call it, the old farmers? The seven sisters. They talk about, you know, there's like 7 plants that work so well together, and if you alternate them, that they feed each other in alternating years and stuff.
Exactly. And that kind of wisdom gets lost when you're shoveling people onto the land or taking them off of the land. So all of the migration probably helped a lot, but I don't think that there were very many farmers that had a lot of that ancestral knowledge, which, you know, that's who's now farming the land, and they're being told by their government to farm as many cash crops as possible. So you've got a lot of wisdom that must temper in the fertility as well. And you could see wisdom and fertility icons like Athena, right? Sort of the vision of both wisdom, prudence, and military might, you know. Also, they call her a virgin because she is completely untouched, like that territory that requires your wisdom and your strength to conquer. So in a lot of ways, Athena is that sort of a primordial, frontier goddess as well. And we could see how that started to influence Columbia, right? So Columbia is this sort of American goddess, and they're using all of these symbols from ancient times in the construction of this Columbia character. Columbia goes back to Eleutheria, which is the Greek word for liberty. So libertas was the Roman version of Columbia. Columbia is pretty much uniquely American, but it was a syncretism with all of those other forces. Eleutheria was a syncretism with Diana Artemis. So we're still seeing the Columbia influence, the goddess influence in places like Washington, D.C. And I think if you were to compare how they're...
It's the District of Columbia. I never knew that, man. I'm glad you taught me that.
Right. Well, let me look her up for you. You can see a lot of these influences just in the motifs that she's using.
Yeah, I never looked into, the etymology of Columbia, and there's Washington. It's the District of Columbia, and it's named after a goddess. I never knew that.
Well, it's either named after a goddess or they just put an IA at the end of Christopher Columbus's name, which is what they want everybody to believe.
I don't believe
Doesn't make any sense to me at all, right?
Too many Greek gods and stuff and all the architecture and everything else. That what you said, that fits.
Look at
even
that.
America, everybody wants to say, oh, it's named after Amerigo Vespucci.
Right.
But no, it's named after Amaru, the land of the serpent. Hey guys, it's no secret that every single day your dollar loses its value. If a man invested $1,000 in silver in the 60s, today that same $1,000 would have magically turned into almost $30,000. Silver and gold only continues to increase in value. If you have a 401k or money sitting in savings, that is just a number in a computer system that is one EMP or hack away from being deleted forever. I've recently teamed up with Cornerstone Assets and Metals and started investing in gold and silver myself. And I highly encourage the listeners, if
If you have money in savings just sitting there, invest it in hard, tangible assets. The same thing with your 401ks. Take a 20 to 30% cut of that 401k, that number in a computer system, and invest into hard, tangible assets that is proven to only increase in value. Be sure to check out the link in the description or the number on the screen, and be sure to tell them that Doc Brown from Prometheus Lens sent you. Torches high, guys.
Which actually fits in with Amaru, the Anunnaki, and the also, I think, some native tribes called it the land of the serpent as well.
Yes, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. I talked to a lot of natives. That serpent mound in Ohio, a lot of people thinks that's a snake eating an egg, but they done some LiDAR testing, and it shows like the ground that's been messed with, throughout the years, and it shows these 4 protrusions, 2 at the bottom outside and 2 at the front, and then there was this little like cone looking like mini little pyramid at the top of that egg, and everybody's like, oh, that just must be like a marker for the rising sun for the summer solstice. But I got to talking to a local guy, and his wife is a Native American, and he told me, he said the Native Americans believe that it was originally a snake, a horned snake, because it shows that disturbed ground in that LiDAR. It looked like it had horns. And then that egg-looking shape was oblong with 2 legs in the front, 2 legs in the back, and then there was that little diamond, that little pyramid, that was the head. So it was a turtle, and they called it Turtle Island. So here was the serpent, Quetzalcoatl from South America, invading Turtle Island and devouring it. And that's why it was Amaru, the land of the serpent, because he took it over. He swallowed Turtle Island.
Well, in a lot of ways, there is that symbol also. Well, I've heard that people believe that there was a massive obelisk that was inside of that egg. And what they say is that you've got to go down to the riverbank and actually go around to the side and look up at where the place is.
I got videos and pictures of it.
There you go. So, I mean, we're literally seeing the remnants of these ancient fertility cults right there in the heart of America, and none of it really gets the kind of attention that it deserves. But so here's another thing they like to do with a lot of the goddess worship is they call it personifications. Personification. What is the definition of a god or a goddess? It would be a personification of like a circle or a sphere of influence, right? So if you're talking about this goddess Columbia, her sphere of influence would be, well, it looks like the American West in expansion, right? Even the goddess Columbia, which is on top of the Capitol building, right, has the idea, she's wearing all of this Native American garb. Jefferson Davis insisted that she not have the Phrygian cap, though, because Jefferson Davis didn't want to bring about the imagery of a freed slave, which is the symbol of the Phrygian cap, forever and ever. So they replaced the Phrygian cap on her head with a bunch of Native American feathers instead. But yeah, there should be a Phrygian cap there, if not for the president of the South. But as you can see in some of these other pictures, she has Phrygian cap galore, right? Boop. And this Phrygian idea comes from Anatolia as well. Here's another, let me see. You can kind of see that. Now, this is uniquely American, right? Uniquely American goddess, but what kind of goddess worship were they doing that would include stuff like these images that now seem like they're out of step with the rest of American culture?
Right.
You know, and it's all about protection. It's all about spreading the grace of America, even though, how'd that work out? We've got a lot of military propaganda being framed with Columbia. I think that's what killed it. But, before every movie from a certain studio, you see the goddess Columbia as well.
Yeah. I never made that connection either, brother.
Right. So this stuff is really interesting. And if you think back to the Virginia flag, have you ever seen the Virginia flag?
Yeah, but I can't recall or describe it to you, but I have seen it.
Yeah. So this is the only flag in America with a titty hanging out. You'd say that's pretty Columbia-esque, right? I mean, that's what it is. But I see in there a lot of the Kali worship, right? That's the same pose that Kali has standing on top of Shiva. And it's really interesting why they would make that leap right there. But, I could pull up Kali real quick. You can see that.
Is he the destroyer god?
Well, Kali is one of the hairs of Shiva's head that was broken in half that became the goddess of destruction. Now again, what do we see her doing? Standing on top of Shiva with her foot down on his chest. That's not an accident, I think. So I think there's a syncretism between Kali, Diana, Artemis, and also she's known as the destroyer as well. There's a instance in the Iliad where she is making the king of Greece, or the Mycenaeans at the time, she's making him sacrifice his daughter because she's actually the patron goddess of Troy. So she says, look, I'll give you victory, but you only need to off your daughter. And so he's about to do it, and he gets stopped, right? He gets stopped because they're like, she's not going to actually give you anything, and you don't get anything for sacrificing your daughter, so don't do that. Instead, he gets a deer and then sacrifices that to her, and she's like, my plan's been foiled. It sounded a lot like Abraham and Isaac. A lot.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there. And even I talked about it in my book. I've seen a lot of correlations with the Greek tale of, what was his name? It was a brother and sister. Prixus, is that right? But Athena or Zeus wanted them both sacrificed, and Athena sends the golden ram that flies to rescue them. But on the way, the woman falls and dies. Kind of like Adam and Eve. The woman falls, and then they land in this garden. It's the Garden of Ares. And then she tells them that, since she died, there's still one that needs to be sacrificed. So therefore, kill the ram, and the ram will take your stead. And then remove its golden fleece and lay it, hang it on the tree in the midst of the Garden of Ares. And there it's guarded by a great serpent. It sounds a lot like the Garden of Eden story. And then you have Abraham and Isaac, because God wanted the child sacrificed, but a ram was the substitute.
Yes, sir. There's a lot of those substitute sacrifice stories in the Bible and in Greek mythology. There's something to it. There really is. And, it becomes kind of hard to really go back and see who's cribbing from whose notes and who's actually, taking it from maybe original sources. But I do know that the Black Sea region, specifically in that Golden Fleece story, was using sheep's wool to filter out the gold from their streams. Mm-hmm. So they literally had golden fleeces. And so that was sort of seen as like the Scythian homeland where they were the goldsmiths of all of the stuff coming down from the mountains. So I wanted to also get into a little bit of the reverse side. So this is the front, right? That's the front. And then this is the rear. What do you think of a triple goddess? Who does that sound like?
I don't know.
A little bit like Hecate, right? But there's also this Diana Nemorensis, which is a Lake Nemi in Rome. Diana is the Roman syncretism of Artemis. What you see here is she's got the Phrygian cap up on top of this pole. This is how they would call the revolutionaries together. Again, this is why the Phrygian cap is such a potent symbol in all of these revolutions, the red cap of Donald Trump is kind of like the continuation of that today. But they would use this sort of Phrygian cap to call together all the people to make for a play for freedom. But at this Diana Nemorensis, this is where we get the King Kill 33 ritual. Have you ever heard of that one? So this was like one of the first conspiracy books about John F. Kennedy and the Freemasons. And what's really interesting about this is that he keeps talking about it in terms of a Freemasonic sacrifice ritual. But it goes into the structure of Washington, D.C. itself. And I'll get to that point. So, yeah, James Shelby Downard is talking about how all of this stuff goes back to this king kill ritual that happened at this Lake Nemai. Now, this was a very important spot to the ancient Romans. They had what they called the King of the Grove. And at the King of the Grove, a new runaway slave would come in and grab a bough off of this tree, right? The very top bough. And when he would take it down, he would use that as a symbol for challenging the old King of the Grove. And so the old King of the Grove would then have to fight this new guy to the death, and whoever wins gets to be the King of the Grove. Now, it's strange, but if you think about the reflecting pool, let me pull up Lake Nemai real quick. If you look at the reflecting pool, this right here is Lake Nemai. This is where they had the King of the Grove ritual, and they call it Diana's Mirror. Diana's Mirror. Now, Diana is also another name for Columbia, right? So the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C. could rightly be called Diana's Mirror as well, or Columbia's Mirror, right?
Yeah.
Well, you've also got the phallus of Washington monuments there, right? So you've got some phallus worship as well. But do you remember the first impeachment of Donald Trump, where they were delivering his papers from the Senate side over to the House side, and they had a huge funerary procession for all of these papers that they were bringing from one side to the other?
Now, I quit watching the news. It's just depressing.
Right. Well, I think what they were having was a symbolic or representational funeral for the old King of the Grove, and sort of a ceremony to replace that old king after they're submitting these papers. And so why would it be ritualized if there wasn't something to the idea of the king dying and being replaced? And all of this is in The Golden Bough by James George Frazer, which is like a 6-set series talking all about these dying and rising god motifs from all of the ancient world. The King of the Grove, that's just sort of the one he uses as his staging area that all of the other syncretisms mount off of. But it's funny because that matches up to Washington, D.C. almost perfectly.
Yep. Sound like Campbell, what is it, his Hero of 1,000 Faces? I've read that.
In a lot of ways it is, yeah. Well, we've all heard of Athena, but what about Minerva? What's the symbol of Minerva?
Right. Now, I've heard that name, but I don't know nothing about her.
Well, she is the Roman version of Athena, and her symbol
is... is it Athena? All the owls.
Right. So Athena and Minerva are both sort of syncretisms of each other. But again, Minerva is the Roman spirit, and Athena is the Greek spirit, because she is like Athens. But it was so well loved that they're like, well, why can't we have an Athena too? So they made Minerva. And what's interesting about this Minerva symbol, also, it goes into the ideas of liberty and what have you. It's underneath the Capitol building.
Doesn't surprise me.
Right. So you've got this owl that is being projected. Here we go. Do you see it? Its head is at the east and its tail is in the west.
Yeah.
Right? 2 eyes right here. So you've got the goddess on top, right? That goddess is right here in the middle, right in the heart region Here's the owl on the other side, and this. Oh, yeah, I didn't want that. And this is where all of the, energy is being sort of funneled out to the rest of it. Now, this is before the sex ritual, right? There's a big womb aspect to it as well. But, that big belly shape of the Capitol dome is right in the belly region of this owl, right? So in a lot of ways, they're kind of indicating this sort of pregnant goddess type motif. And what you see here is this, right? This is where the owl is right here, pointing directly at that Washington Monument, right? So just to get that in perspective, and you've got that triangle right here. Again, this is the perfect Roman sort of motif to really make those huge speeches, right? This is connected to all parts of the known world, right? It's definitely a geoglyph. So people who say stuff like, well, we're a Christian nation, I don't know how many Christian icons you've seen like this, but that is pretty clearly not that. Right. But what is a deist? Did it survive the revolution? Where did it go? Shouldn't there be churches of deism or something around?
Yeah. They just went underground in secret societies, I think. What do you think?
Well, I think they didn't want to declare any fealty to any church because they didn't want that church to be the one to take over America. And so they went with the blandest possible interpretation of God, which is deism, which clearly they're not practicing a bland form of God right here. Clearly, like that's a ritual. So they had to declare the bland form to kind of, forget about all the rest of it. But they didn't really do a good job of forgetting it. So here's a better example right here. This one right here, this shows you all the different places. So again, this would be right in the middle of this mall strip, right? And that mall strip comes up to the, I wish I had a better one. Comes up to the Washington Monument. Now, on the roads or underneath the Washington Monument is the Vesica Piscis, or the union of these two circles, which is universally known as, in symbolism, as the yoni or the vagina. So they're clearly saying the obelisk through the yoni is a sex magic ritual, but apparently that's not really well known either.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about that reflecting pool possibly being like the lining, basically, of the vulva, and that the obelisk, of course, is the penis, and that the shadow goes through that reflecting pool. It travels through the vulva and then penetrates the dome, which is the womb, and there's a whole ritual like with that, like, trying to call forth the whatever God that they're trying to call forth to embody the upcoming president. And that's why they do all the speeches and all that stuff right there.
Do you see the Vesica Piscis? Right underneath of it in the... it's pretty obvious after you see it.
Two joining circles.
Yep. So they could say, oh, it's like a sundial, but is that what sundials are for? Could be.
Yeah.
But it's facing like, again, to the west of it would be the reflecting pool. So when the shadow is hitting that reflecting pool, it'd be in the early morning. And when the shadow is hitting the top of the dome, that would be in the late afternoon. So if you can decode from there, I think that would be good. But the entire city of Washington, D.C. is set up along the dog star. It's aligned to the planet, or the star Sirius. So they were doing a lot of fertility rituals here. Was that something that happened in Oklahoma? I would say probably. Probably. I don't think you get it from doing this stuff to just forgetting about it once you hit the middle of the country. I think they were still doing those rituals.
Yeah. Yeah, that's... I had hints of some of this stuff, like with Washington, but, like I said earlier, where you gave me the glasses, I'm seeing it in a whole new light in different places, and I had absolutely no clue about the whole Oklahoma thing. That blew my mind.
Well, I think there's a lot of the old ways that really did survive a lot of the transitions over and over again throughout the years between churches battling and people fighting. Somehow they were able to keep a lot of this knowledge under wraps away from the general public, and they're just expressing it in these sort of massive earthbound spells, right? I mean, that's kind of exactly what the Peruvians did. They had all of these different spells that they put on the side of these hills for miles and miles at the Nazca Plain. So I don't really see Washington, D.C. or any of these other aligned cities as being too much different from the Nazca Plains. It's all geoglyphing and used for rituals during certain times of the year.
Yep, nothing news under the sun. I mean, they were doing it down in Peru with the effigy mound, serpent mound, that Newark hinge, all the different alignments with that. They just recently found out that the opening of the hinge lines up with Beltane, the sunrise of Beltane, all the mound structures, and then you go to Europe. I mean, it's just, I could go on and on for days. People know what I'm talking about. All this stuff lines up astronomically and aligns with the solstices and equinoxes. I mean, there's, of course they're going to keep practicing this. They're just going to modernize it.
Well, in some ways, I don't see them as ever having the ability of explaining it again. I don't think they understand the purpose of why they do it like this anymore. I think they've sort of lost. Yeah. But they're still going to do it. And you can see this, how they set up all cities is they make a central point and then they start radiating everything out from there. So all of these other cardinal directions are part of that centralized location for them to lay out these cities on this grid pattern. So that center of the city pattern would most commonly correspond to, back in the old days, the omphalos, right? So the center of the universe. And all of these different societies had their own center of the universe, or the navel of the universe, as omphalos means. And so what they would try and do is set up a central core that then all of the heavens and earth could be united on. And so I think that's just how they've built cities since the beginning of time. They didn't do it half-assed or, halfway, because they were trying to reset sort of the karma of the area into what they wanted to do. So magic is the type of terraforming that they're doing before all of these city building rituals.
It makes sense, man. I mean, like I said, you see it in the ancient cities, the ancient world, and as you've shown us tonight, you see it laid out in modernity, and it's just wild, man. Solomon said it best: nothing new is under the sun.
Right.
Yeah,
but in some ways, I think there's stuff that we can sort of bring back. So if we're doing construction projects around our house and we understand that there are sort of earth energies that you've got to kind of compete with and maybe make concessions to, lay out everything on your property according to a central stone, just like all the greatest, city creators of all time. I'm under the impression, actually, doing enough research into this, that I think goddess worship is just another name for architecture. Because all of these old, temples were, laid out in the proportions of the human body. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to show the expression of the gods through space in these places that you travel over time to get to. So the male god is Kronos, or this idea of time. And the female goddess is Rhea, or space. And so between time and space, that's sort of the plane that you're on. All of these buildings that are built along these alignments and things like that ascribe to goddess worship, like as you can see with the goddess Columbia. They put those on their sacred buildings because that's how they worship, is by building these sacred sites to them. So using the idea of maybe finding out the earth energies that do impact your house, whether magnetism, sound frequency, light. These things go into all sorts of practices like Qigong and what's that other one? Feng Shui. Feng Shui.
Feng Shui, yeah.
Right. So Feng
Yep.
Shui literally means wind and water. So they had the idea that there are two ways that this energy or this fertility force moves over your stuff, either like water or like wind. And so if it's like wind, that has certain properties. And when it's like water, those have certain properties. So you want the energy to collect in places that are beneficial to you, and you want it to disperse or blow away in spaces that might harm you in the future. At least this is their, incredibly complex list of syncretisms or, how they saw the world. But all of those references can be applied to modern building. Like even Donald Trump got a feng shui person for all of his major developments. That could just be, marketing or whatever. But it seems like he might have some sort of maybe a superstitious streak when it comes to this sort of magic idea. Maybe that's not something that he developed on his own.
He studied Kabbalah. He talked about he had a Kabbalistic teacher in his book, Art of the Deal. But if I had to choose wind or water, I guess I'd be like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee said, be water. Water can freeze. It can crash. You pour water into the cup, it becomes the cup. Be water, my friends.
Right. So for the feng shui, that would be more like fuzzy materials that would cause the qi to move in a much slower fashion, and really flat, smooth surfaces that causes the qi to increase speed or become more like air. So that's sort of how they would have these alternating energy forms that would collect energy in certain parts of the house and disperse it in others. And also it's all based on the orientation. We've lost our basic orientation skills. You can ask a person out there, I know it's not you, but you can ask a person out there, which way is east? They'll just come back with a blank look. They have no idea, So in a lot of ways, we've destroyed our mental connection with the earth, which would be the alignments, northwest, east, and south. That used to be something common knowledge for everybody. And now hardly anybody even know how to find east, much less which direction it is.
Yeah. Yep. And they even built them like that. I mean, and I guess you could call it close as you can to modernity, which never mind. It is modernity. They're still doing it now. But like the Amish, when they build their houses, even to this day, they align their doors and windows to the east to face the rising sun, because they don't use all these modern electric amenities. So therefore they use that rising sun to heat their house, and they really insulate the hell out of it. And then they also study the high and low pressure systems of their area, and then they lay their house like that too, and they open their windows. That way it's like a constant air pressure sweeping through that house, ventilating it in the summertime and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, they're on top of all that stuff even to this day.
Right. Mm-hmm. And if we built our houses more often, we would actually know that stuff as well, because those are the first factors you have to take into account when setting up your job site and everything else around it. And if you don't do it right the first time, you're going to be screwed on that house. So it's very important to get the alignment and everything else set up perfectly. And I don't think any of these modern builders have any sort of heart for that at all. That takes more care than I've seen from any modern builder, who will just leave a disaster and charge a person $400,000 for it, or more.
Yep, 100%. Man, well, Headless dude, thank you, man, for coming and hanging out with me tonight and sharing your wisdom with us. And you opened my eyes, dude, to a lot of stuff. So I'm sure a lot of the listeners have had their eyes open too, man. If somebody was like, I don't know, like off doing something, not paying attention, maybe at the beginning of the show, just let everybody know where they can find you if they want to hear more of this stuff.
All right. You can go to my Twitter at Headless Giant or Headless_Giant. And you can also check me out on Instagram, Headless Giant. And if you have any sort of weird paranormal experiences that you want me to read on my show, you can send it to headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com. And me and Nick from the Occult Rejects will read that on Thursdays tomorrow. So it's going to be a good time.
Nice. Yeah, man. Once again, thank you. And, check their stuff out. Him and Nick are two of my favorite people. Don't tell nobody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. But, guys, man, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out his stuff. Just remember, the difference between the known and the unknown is what? It's the journey. So, good journey, guys.